This is an audacious thing to say, perhaps, but President Donald John Trump is a wartime president. And he himself said this at the UN right after he overcame the blockade of the escalator and the teleprompter outage. Man, I hope President Trump makes a big real estate announcement with these guys, such as, hey, you know what? We're going to sell that plot of land and relocate the UN to, we're going to pick the most conservative city in the United States of America, and we're going to buy you a barndominium, condominium made out of a barn. You can meet there. We'll meet there. And while you're in town, you can hang out there. He should make that move. He's a wartime president. And he said something about the wars that he's ended and some realities of how he was treated by the UN, which wasn't that a peacekeeping organization? When it began, wasn't that kind of the goal? To keep world peace? So President Trump, without the aid of a teleprompter, delivered what I thought was a great speech. If you hear President Trump talk about it, it's the greatest speech ever given at the UN. And here's something he said.
I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter.
He handled himself so well. You know he was outraged, and rightfully so. He handled himself so well. They were betting on a meltdown. They didn't get it. Incidentally, President Trump asked her, hey, what'd you think of the speech? She said, I couldn't hear it. They didn't broadcast it to the rest of the building. Unless you specifically had your translation set on, they didn't broadcast it. Secondly, I want to hear the translations. I want to hear what the world leaders were actually hearing, because this sabotage of a wartime president. Now, he said he ended wars on 7 continents. Fair enough. It's the 8th that matters. It's the most important of the continents. Now, maybe not to God, because God sees us all equally. He loves us all equally. God is the God of the universe, not of the United States of America. But in terms of global future, global peace, it's the 8th continent that matters, and it's there that President Trump is leading a war. I hope President Trump understands that he's leading a war. I hope his team understands that he's leading a war. And I hope that what I think he's doing is truly what he's doing, because I think there's some, opportunities to look behind the lines or between them as to some of the policies of President Trump, that he may well be already on a war footing here. My friend Tim Cruikshank knows what it is to be on a war footing. He was a Navy SEAL. He was a medic attached to the SEAL teams. He did 3 deployments on our behalf, Afghanistan and Iraq. He knows what it is to face an enemy who hates you. He knows what it is to be in a spiritual war. Yes, he's looked face to face with Taliban people, and he's told me, Todd, the hatred that they have for us is indescribable. It's almost spiritual. It is spiritual, I think. When Tim came back, he chose a life of relative peace. First, he was a BUDS instructor to help people get into the Navy SEALs. Then he founded Bone Frog Coffee to honor the SEAL teams. Every bag says God Country Team on it. You can't honor your friends with junk coffee that you private label and tell a great story about. Some people do that in nutritional brands, etc. That's not what Tim did. He partnered with a coffee legend, the guy who started Seattle's Best Coffee. That's his mentor. That guy, Dave, even makes some of these roasts. And then he came full circle. As Bone Frogs succeeded, he's honoring the teams through bags like the Extortion 17 roast. Biggest loss of life in the history of the Special Forces community. You can buy that bag and that coffee. You can go to bonefrogcoffee.com/Todd. Use promo code Todd to save 10% off your first purchase, 15% off subscription coffee. It's bonefrogcoffee.com/Todd. 10% of proceeds goes to help the families of fallen Navy SEALs. And Tim knows what it's like to be on a war footing, and I hope President Trump is, in fact, acting as a wartime president. Item 1 on this, as a wartime president. President Trump has named the enemy. Antifa is one of the enemies. Black Lives Matter Incorporated as well. They're an offshoot. They're cousins of one another. Molly Hemingway, who I think still lives in D.C., saw this. Is the ostensibly Roman Catholic and very wealthy and very left-wing Georgetown University doing anything at all or whatsoever to protect the lives, much less the freedom of thought of its students from this murderous club? Andrew Kolvitz took this picture, apparently. It's from the Georgetown campus. It says, "Hey, fascist. The only political group that celebrates when Nazis die." There's a QR code there. This is very, very definitely tied to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. "Hey, fascist," catch was on one of the bullet casings. Very definitely tied to this. President Trump has named the enemy. I hope this is a wartime stance. He has said that they're going to look at other left-wing groups and who's funding them. I hope this is a wartime stance. I hope that some of the reasons why President Trump has mobilized the National Guard into some cities is, yes, to provide stability for the police forces there as they're dealing with rampant crime, which has been allowed to get out of control as a policy decision by Democrats, many of whom are bought and paid for by the same types of people, at least, if not the people themselves, who are funding Antifa. Destabilize is part of the Cultural Revolution. I hope that those National Guard troops are being placed in these cities because President Trump's team knows this is where Antifa and Trans-Tifa and Black Lives Matter Incorporated and the John Brown Gun Club have comfort and succor, where they're taken care of. He knows that we all know, if we track the leftist cities at all, that this is where the drug cartels are openly protected. Their soldiers are openly protected from arrest for things like DUI. Their businesses have been basically legalized. Fentanyl, the traffic in human flesh, meth, cocaine, heroin, what have you, are effectively legalized in these cities. Those monies are flowing somewhere. We know of occasions where politicians have been paid off by the cartels. We know of occasions where judges have been paid off by the cartels. We know this happens. The question is at what scale and how clever are they at laundering the monies? I hope this is a wartime stance. I hope those National Guard troops are there knowing that when President Trump begins, make it so, God, arresting Antifa members, arresting cartel members, arresting Black Lives Matter Incorporated and John Brown Gun Club members, when that happens, I hope those National Guard troops are there to back up the cops when these revolutionary groups say, okay, that's it. It's time. See, they're already saying this. They've been saying it for quite a while. It's time. It's been happening for quite a while. Shoot and move tactics occurred during the George Floyd riots in places like St. Louis, St. Paul. There were actual shoot and move wars between Black Lives Matter Incorporated and Antifa types. When I say shoot and move, I mean tactical calls. Left is good, right is good. Moving, retreat, targeting, back me up, all radio signaled. There has been rehearsal after rehearsal. What does it look like to seize 6 blocks of a city? How long can we hold it? What can we get when we agree to leave? These have been test runs. This comes out of a place that is the launching bed for all of what's bad in America. And all credit to Carolyn Borsenka. And this is linked in the show notes. She got this exclusively. This is a conversation, she says, between the revolution or at the Revolutionary Socialism Conference. Listen to this.
When it is like getting to a place like LA where they're actively actively under occupation by the military, like at what point do these community what is it? Community security groups. At what point do they arm up?
Community security groups. What does that mean? In the parlance of Antifa and Black Lives Matter Incorporated, community security groups mean the groups who are there to protect the marginalized people from being taken to the, disappearance camps. To the camps. And you know what I mean by camps, and that's what they're pretending is happening. You saw the Mockingbird media pretend that ICE was using a 5-year-old autistic girl as bait for her father to force him to come out. Hey, you better come out of the house. We got your kids. That never happened. He left the kid in the car, a kid he'd abandoned. It never happened the way they said it. So this guy is saying, when do we arm up? And the community safety patrols, Black Lives Matter Incorporated and Antifa made a run in Seattle, made a run at demanding the dissolution of the police force replaced with community safety patrols headed by guys like that. This has been going on Reddit 2 weeks before the shootings in Texas, the latest ones against ICE. People said on Reddit in these groups, people need to start blasting. Those Asians should be handcuffed behind their backs and given a 10-second head start. Shoot first, ask later. Those are kidnappers. Take them out. Now, we have enough resources to go figure out who these people are. I mean, think of how quickly they found out people were saying, take vitamin C, vitamin D, go get fresh air. They found out who these were. There's discussions about finding the people, masked DSH ICE agents, smash out windows and fire 3 gunshots into the side of a vehicle. Wake up, America. It's time for action. It's time, people. They've made the first shots. Now it's time to return the favor. These people are findable. President Trump has said that he has ended wars on 7 continents. I hope he understands that he's on a war footing here. I hope he understands, and I got to believe he does. I got to believe Dan Bongino gets this. I have to believe Kash Patel gets this. I have to believe his Joint Chiefs of Staff get this. I have to believe they understand that these attacks are going to grow in complexity. Then right now, I hope they understand that the reason they're choosing these particular targets is because there's a facsimile of community support for this, which is tragic, and it's part of the assassination culture. 40% of Democrats say it's okay to off President Trump, off him. What percentage of them say it's okay to off a DHS officer? Do you think it's less than 40% or more? I don't think we've polled on that. We should. Is it okay to off a DHS officer? After all, they're literally taking people to the camps. I hope they understand that these attacks will grow in complexity. It's not going to be this guy with his bad shooting who probably panicked, ended up offing himself. It's going to be people who are locked and loaded, who've practiced at doing things like taking out electrical facilities and alarms before they go after a great big structure and go in and do the Bill Ayers thing, which is to take an explosive device into a police station. Meanwhile, we learned that Sunday, prior to President Trump's speech, the London Times published the fact that staffers at the UN had already considered sabotaging the escalators and elevators and telling them that they simply ran out of money. So sorry, we ran out of money just when you stepped on the escalator. The UN, the staffers there, you know what? I think they understand that President Trump is a wartime president. I think they understand on which side they stand.